Great. As a graduating student, over the past year, I've sought career advice from numerous individuals. The following are some adapted words from one individual from a seemingly unlikely source of wisdom, a political figure. He says, each of you, over the next few years, will have the chance to discover the power of serving others. And I say chance because you won't have to take it. There's no community service requirements in the real world, no one forcing you to care. You can take your degree, walk out of this room, and chase only after the big house and the nice suits and all the other things that our money culture says you should buy. You can choose to narrow your concerns and live your life in a way that tries to separate your story from Canada's. But I hope you don't. And not because you have an obligation to those less fortunate, though you do have that obligation. And not because you have a debt to all those who helped get you here, though you do have that debt. It's because you have an obligation to yourself. Because our individual salvation depends on our collective salvation. Because thinking only about yourself, fulfilling your immediate wants and needs, betrays a poverty of ambition. And because it's only when you hitch your wagon something larger than yourself that you realize your true potential and discover the role you'll play in writing the next great chapter in our story. Those are the words of Barack Obama at Wesleyan's commencement ceremony on May 25th. And I felt like it was very appropriate for the topic of my discussion here this afternoon, which is why business grads should pursue careers in the social economy. And so just to define the social economy, this is the third sector. These organizations that are community service, voluntary, not-for-profit, non-governmental. And so when I spoke to these different, when I sought advice from these different individuals over the past year, each of them kind of came together to tell me to pursue a career that met the intersection of the unique skills that I had, where those skills were needed in the marketplace, and then really what just made me happy. And I think Mr. Obama would agree with this kind of advice. I think he had a more creative lexicon. He called it collective salvation. He called it something to hitch your wagon to. And he called it an obligation to yourself. So first I want to talk about collective salvation. This is my friend Emily. Emily's passionate, and Emily's going to change this world. In fact, Emily and her friend Amanda want to set up a fair trade coffee shop that's going to double as a housing shelter for street youth in Toronto, and just a space for the marginalized youth of Toronto's culture. Unfortunately, Amanda has no idea how to write a business plan. She doesn't know what a value proposition is. She has no idea who Michael Porter is. And she definitely wouldn't know where to start with actually writing a cash flow statement. But at the same time, Emily has some unique skills. She's incredibly creative. She's ridiculously intelligent. And she and her friends actually make and sell crafts at a local market that are made out of garbage. Her cost of goods sold are zero. And so in my own work with a not-for-profit organization startup, I get the opportunity to work with web design people, with creative people, with communications people, with legal people, and together I think we're really making a difference, and we're actually more than the sum of our parts. Next, I want to talk about the needs of this world. And in this time, I can only provide you with a completely non-exhaustive list of the global challenges we currently face. We want to talk about climate change, and scientists that are telling us that our carbon emissions are raising near levels of catastrophic change. Species extinction, where we are currently undergoing, according to scientists, the first mass extinction in 65 million years, where we're losing 50 species every day. We have natural disasters, earthquakes in China, and cyclones in Myanmar, where we're actually changing the coastline. We have famines in India. We have flooding in the Maritimes and fires on the West Coast. We have wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In Tibet, we have human rights oppression and human rights violations. In Darfur, we still have genocide currently ongoing where the UN says 400,000 people have died. In Canada, we accept 20,000 refugees every year, and in the Waterloo region, 2,600 people required the use of emergency shelters last year. In fact, I'd say you need to look no further than this room, and you talk to Stuart, who told us last week about the 2 Canadians who die every week from secondhand smoke, or Landry with the gun violence and the 192 shooting incidents in Toronto this past year. In the words of a civil rights activist, I submit to you that if a man doesn't have something to die for, he isn't fit to live. And yes, a little bit extreme, but you probably don't start a whole movement without being particularly confident in your convictions. And so the last point is around happiness. And I combed online library databases, went through survey after survey, report after report. And the nonprofit sector were either happier, more satisfied with their work, or at the end of the day, more challenged by their work than their counterparts in the for-profit and the government sector. And so for me, this means that this work is fun, meaningful, challenging, and satisfying. And so I'd like to close this presentation the same way I started it. And these are with the words of Barack Obama again from that same commencement ceremony. And he said, and so, should you take the path of service? Should you choose to take up one of these causes as your own? No, they will experience frustrations and failures. Even your successes will be marked by imperfections and unintended consequences. There will be times when friends and family will urge you to pursue more sensible endeavors with more tangible rewards. And there will be times when you're tempted to take their advice. But it's really in those times where it's most important for you to remember that there's nothing naive about your impulse to change this world. Because it's only when you do hit your wagon something larger than yourself. Because all it takes is one act of service, one blow against injustice, to send forth a tiny ripple of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Jasmine?
6-4. So I liked how you looked at the entire audience. You weren't focused on one area. I noticed you looked at everyone, so that's great. Good pace, and you seemed really friendly when you were up there because you smiled a lot, so that's good. And I liked how you used real-life personal examples of your friends. And you seemed really passionate about your topic. Something you can improve on, a couple of us, and you may have been a hip shifter. You kept going like this. So that's all.
Yeah, I thought that it was really great. There were a few times when I had chills, but it's probably just because I get that easy. But you chose really good quotes, and the authorities that you chose to cite were really great as well. You just seem very sincere when you're presenting, like very kind and smiling and talking, even if it's something that's more of a serious subject. It's just great presence that you have when you're up here. I liked how you defined social economy for us, because I wasn't really sure exactly what it was, but it's really good that you defined what it was and then talked about the different areas that you can go to work in it. I thought the example of Emily was awesome, to use an actual person and to say that this is why they need people with our skills to help further causes like that. And that you knew the material really well. You had a lot of quotes and passages to memorize, but it didn't really seem like you had memorized it. There was a little bit at the end when you clearly blanked, but it didn't faze you. It wasn't a big stop. You just took a little sigh, stepped over, and had a backup, and it didn't affect the quality of the presentation at all. One thing that I thought that you could work on was to take more pauses and to slow down the speech a little bit to allow us to process what you're saying, because there were a lot of really impactful things that you were saying, but it was just sort of really fast. And some stumbling over words that could have been helped by slowing the pace down a bit, but I thought it was really great.
Thank you.
That's one person. Thank you.